All right. Well, welcome again to episode number 4 of our Advocacy 101 series. I will get this down before the last episode. Again, we have Leslie Bruce. Thanks, Leslie, for being here today. And if you guys are just joining us now, I highly encourage you to look at our other episodes. Episodes 1 talks about advocacy and why it's important, what it's about. Episode 2 talks about all the prep work about before you start talking to the legislators. And episode 3 talks about the day of. Okay, now you're in front of the legislator. What do you do? How do you say things? How do you make it meaningful? And today we're going to talk about the follow-up. I think this is one of the most crucial parts of the conversation is after the visit. What do you do? How do you make your message stick? And how do you keep the relationship going? So for the next 15 minutes or so, that's going to be our topic. All right. So Leslie, we finished the meeting. We did our pleasantries. We're back in our day job. What do we do now?
I think the first thing you need to do is send a thank you note. And I know that sounds like your grandmother talking, but the first thing you do is send a thank you. If you have met with a legislator, a handwritten thank you note is really important. If, given the anthrax and the mail delays in Washington, sometimes it's easier to, write it on a piece of paper or type it on your letterhead or whatever and fax it. Because it's going to be, you really want it to be timely, not weeks after, but your state legislators, you could mail it to the state capitol if you met with them there, or you can mail it to the local office of either a state or a federal. Mail the thank you to the local office, and then you avoid the whole DC thing.
So go beyond just the email thank you. Gotcha.
Yes.
All right.
I think you can, frequently you can use an email thank you with staff.
Right.
But you do not forget this. This is really important that you do that.
All right. You guys listening to this?
It's really important. Thank you notes and appreciation. They work hard, for whatever you think about government or more or less of it or whatever. They are doing the very best job, and they really want to do a good job. And you need to understand the demands on their time and the fact that they, were able to share some with you and offered to help you in some way. And so you really need to express appreciation for that. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing is, if there were things in the meeting that you said you'd follow up on, let's just say that the legislator asked a question that you didn't know the answer to, and you said, rather thank you than make something up. Never do that.
All right, folks, don't make something up in Washington, D.C.
Or any legislators. No, do not make stuff up. So if you said, I will follow up with you and I'll provide that.
Right.
So you want to be sure you are prompt in doing that. Do that within a week.
Right.
Get them what they ask for. Again, you're not trying to paper them to death because they won't read it.
Right.
Give them the information they ask for. After that, you're going to track on, you say perhaps, would you let me know when the vote comes up, or would you let me know how you decide to do on this? Perhaps they didn't commit one way or the other in the meeting as to what they would do. Can you let me know what you decide to do? Would you follow up with us? And make sure they have the emails and stuff of all the people who are in the meeting. So that's very important, is asking them to follow up with you.
Gotcha.
And then beyond, again, we're building a relationship not on one single issue, but over time on a series of issues. So what you want to do is forward information, not, again, too much. But if an issue or a new source of data or information comes along that is relevant to what you discussed, forward it to the staff person in an email saying, I thought you might be interested. Here's another argument. Here's another group that came on board to our position. Here's, basically you're keeping them informed in an unoppressive, friendly way. And so now you've got something going over time. You're absolutely building that relationship, continuing a dialogue with that office, with that staffer usually in particular. And if maintaining those is critical to their being comfortable with doing what it is you're asking them to do.
So, okay, you're following up with the right folks, and as you know, elections come, and then you have to start all over again. Is there a way to build up on that momentum, or is there a way to leverage perhaps when there are new elected officials coming in? Can you is it okay to say, hey, this is an issue that we've been working on for the past 5 years. We have to continue that with your good office. Is that possible?
Absolutely. I mean, you will, in some sense, have to start over a little bit because you're building relationships from scratch again.
Right.
But you can bring that history forward with the staff person and say, just, in that introductory meeting, like we talk about having before you actually need anything, is
have
to say,
the relationship before you need it.
Here's the history. Here's the history of the issue. We've been working with your office. We're delighted to do that. And basically get them on board. And then it's also very interesting, you mentioned elections and, staff shuffle around, especially if an office holder changes.
Right.
But, sometimes it's a real benefit that they moved somewhere else because now you already have a seed planted somewhere else that you didn't have to plant yourself. So I think that's an important thing to understand, that staff do move and it can be to your advantage.
So one of the things that I think it's important is that you're also involved in what events they're doing. So you can also show that, hey, I'm also supportive of the community outreach efforts. Where can someone find these things? Like what your congressperson's up to or what your state senator's up to?
You can look at their website, but it tends to be they publish things after the fact.
Right.
You can subscribe to their newsletter.
There you go.
Almost all legislators now have a place on their website. You have to live in the district to subscribe. Because they really don't want frequently people. They just have so little time and so much to cover that they really can't worry about other people in other districts.
Exactly.
But you can subscribe to their email newsletter.
Okay.
And it will come to you and it'll tell you what's coming up. Workshops, town hall meetings, that kind of thing. It is good to support them at those events. It is good to do that. I think if you can, I mean, you have to, for those of us who advocate from nonprofits, we can, like HIMSS, we can attend a campaign event. We can find out when those are, not usually terribly hard, and then support them, at a very modest level, but at least you're doing something. And that gives you an opportunity to go up to them, shake their hand, remind them who you are and the issue that brought you together. And so I think that's an important tool that people go, oh God, do I have to do that?
Exactly.
No, you don't have to, but you should if you're trying to be effective. Again, it's not a big deal. People just think it is, so I encourage people to do that too. Attend these things, look for opportunities to meet them in the community, reinforcing your relationship.
So we've talked about building relationships, establishing common ground. How do you work through an issue that you disagree with each other? So what is a good way of respectfully saying, I disagree, here's where I'm coming from, while maintaining that relationship and being respectful?
Well, I think, you use the word respectful a lot, and that's the whole ball game right there. Is because politics makes strange bedfellows, and your friend today may be your enemy on the next issue. You never know, but you need the relationship to survive whatever the issue is. The key is the relationship, not the issue. So you want to say, and like you just did, I respectfully disagree with you on this. This is why. Can you help me understand why you think this approach is better? And have them articulate that, because you don't know how to overcome their objections until you know what they are. So you really want that information from them. You want that feedback. Why is what I'm saying not as compelling to you? And it's all about respect. I mean, we can all agree to disagree. We can, and again, we have to. We have to continue to work together. We really do, despite the fact that how things look in Washington and dysfunctional and all that stuff. We really have to be civil. It's important and respectful, and continue to work through disagreements.
And I think that you've touched on a very important topic, really listening. Because what I've noticed a lot of times is people are doing the, I think it was Stephen Covey who called it the dialogue of the deaf, where I'm not talking, but I'm just waiting to rebut your statement instead of truly listening. Where are you coming from? Why is that your point of view? And let me see if I understand. I think that's one of the things that is very important. And, you know, when you're nervous, you're talking to the legislator, you're trying to balance all of these things. Sometimes you come across as being a little harsh. How do you bounce back? So let's say you get into a discussion with them and you feel like, oh my God, I think it's getting too heated. How do you bounce back and seek common ground or not leave the meeting in a bad way?
You know, I think you can always appreciate their time and appreciate the fact that they are being candid with you.
Right.
I don't think you ever want a meeting to be heated.
Right.
I think you want to say, one person says one thing and they'll say, but, and they do a gentle rebuttal or try to refute the facts. You never want it to be personal. You never want to be threatening. You never want to be rude. I mean, people who used to come into our legislative office and, hold their finger in the air and tell us they were a taxpayer.
Wow.
And so we had, that doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
Calm, rational, and emotional messages.
Right.
And understanding, as you said, listening. What is it? That's what relationship building is, give and take. And so you do have to listen and understand their objections or whatever. And then you go home and, regroup and figure out, how do I overcome those objections? Well, how would I get past that? How do I counter those kinds of things in a way that resonates with them?
Wow. That is very powerful. You're right. Because a lot of times people are just looking at, okay, how can I bolster my stance on something? They're not really looking at, how do I understand you better and get through and work through this rough patch. Last question. So you talked about being a resource and having that ongoing relationship. What is the best way to become a resource for public office?
Well, we talked about forwarding information, on a periodic basis that's relevant to your issue or your organization, so that you're continuing to educate that person, so they see you are, on top of the latest information, you're forwarding it, you're keeping them apprised. So when something comes across their desk, whether it's a staff person or the elected official, when an issue, they will say, I'm going to call Ian.
Right.
He's been keeping me up to speed on this stuff. I'm going to call him and see what he thinks of this bill or this regulation, and say, how is this going to affect your hospital, your patients? How give me the feedback.
Right.
And that's the resource I'm talking about, being the one that they call to find out your opinion on a given piece of legislation.
So being a subject matter expert, you obviously have to point out both sides of the coin, and more often than not, you might be biased to one side. How do you become a resource that is as objective as possible to an issue that you're passionate about or partial to?
Well, as an advocate, we're already partial.
Exactly.
So I think it's really good to be able to say, here's what I think, here, and HIMSS has a policy that says this. Always refer back to your organization and their mission and any kind of principles that they have that govern how they land on legislation for or against, and say, this, HIMSS feels this way. I have to agree with that because of X, Y, and Z from my perspective. You might hear this and that, which are contrary to this position, and then you offer what you would say to refute those opposition arguments, and basically give them your honest opinion. And again, no bluffing, no lying, no making things up. You just have to give them an honest, reasoned opinion.
Wow.
That they can trust.
Well, I think that's very important, because a lot of times you only see one side of the story, depending on who you're talking to. and they hardly bring up, the points from the opposition. So I think that presenting it and also giving your point of view, why you disagree or what are the merits that you think are important. So in this relationship building that we're talking about, is there a way to not transfer really, but share that relationship with your other advocacy members? So let's say I have a good relationship with Senator Feinstein's office, for example, and now I want to pass that on to John. How do you do that? Because everyone moves around, both from in DC and also in our organization. What is a good way of keeping the relationship going when you have turnovers?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you can't really transfer relationships.
Right.
But, we all do it in business. And, LinkedIn is kind of built on this concept, is that you provide a very warm introduction of John to the Feinstein staffer that you know, and say, he's going to be working on this issue. If you can point out something they have in common, terrific.
There you go.
That's helpful too, but you want to make as warm a connection between those two people as possible. And saying that he is going to, move the issue forward for us, and I'm really looking forward to having him in the loop with us working on this.
Yeah, I think it's very important because a lot of times people get passionate about an issue, they advocate for it, and then again, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's no continuity. And there's no one really taking on the torch, so to speak, in terms of moving the issues forward. So I think this is great.
Continuity is, not always easy. But you work hard, and you do the best you can to achieve it.
Right. Well, Leslie, I think shared a lot again. I'm learning so much. I hope you're learning from this too, but I hope you guys are learning as well. So key pointers that I've seen for the follow-up: thank you note, make it personal, physical, piece of paper instead of just an email, keeping the relationships open, becoming a resource for the office, and also being as objective as possible when stating, different sides of the issue, and continuity, continuing the fight. Well, thanks, Leslie.
All right.
Again.
Take care.
All right, guys, so that's a wrap for another session. Thank you very much, and join us again soon. Thank you.